If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, and you guessed it, it's free. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in just one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Right.
Yeah.
Pieces of a Nation.
Yeah, that's good, man.
Chicken, Mike. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Hooka. I'm Richard Chu at Justin Sandler's house. No. What's up, everyone?
Richard Chu, I'm here for you.
What's up, everyone? This is welcome to another episode of Pieces of a Nation, where we gain harmonious empowerment through dialogue and conversation. Today, my name is Richard Chu, by the way. We were just rapping about that. Today, we're here with my buddy Justin Sandler. Justin, welcome on the show.
Thank you, my man. Nice to be here. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, man. How you been?
A pleasure.
Yeah.
I have been, as a whole, very good, but not without struggle. Mm-hmm. That's for definite sure.
Yeah.
Your audience doesn't know this yet, but they will in the next few minutes. But I'm coming off of a very intense 2 years of cancer journey. 1 year that was nothing but living in hospitals, doing chemotherapy, doing all kinds of heavy treatments, followed by multiple surgeries, 5 surgeries in total, including an open chest recession. And I lost a lot of parts of my insides.
Wow.
During that. The tumor had to come out, part of my lung and heart and main veins had to be rebuilt with cow tissue, and it was a whole sort of reworking of my anatomy, if you will, and it left me pretty much at the lowest of low. Even though my journey was positive and inspiring to myself and to others, I was definitely feeling a lot of exhaustion and lack of stamina and frustration at the fact that I was free of cancer last year, but I was feeling unable to do anything. So it's sort of like you go through an intense journey, and whether it's a cancer journey or whether it's any type of huge obstacle that you're climbing through and overcoming, sometimes when you think you've rid yourself of the obstacle, that's actually your halfway point. And that was something I had to learn through cancer, is that once I got through the physical intensity of the treatments and the surgeries and I was technically cancer free, that was my halfway point of my journey. And now you have to put the pieces back together, and you have to realize how much you've been affected by it. In my particular case, I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without getting completely out of breath. Right. I'm still dealing with a lot of effects today that are sort of residual, but in the interim, especially the first 6 months after my last heart surgery, I was still feeling kind of helpless. Couldn't really work, couldn't really do much of anything. And but right before I got my diagnosis, I was competing in the Gold's Gym 12-week fitness challenge. Wow. I was playing in a weekly Sunday flag football league with a bunch of kids half my age, and I was outrunning most of them. Wow. Playing drums in 2 bands, one of which would headline shows, every couple weeks, 90 minutes to 2 hours when I'm playing drums at full intensity. Wow. And I was able to outlast everybody. My stamina was great. My physical health was great. I'd been vegan since 2011. Fitness-wise, I was at the peak. And then when you come out and you're like, okay, you're cancer free, and your team says, go B, we'll see you in 3 months for your scans. Now you're like, okay, what do? I can't walk up a flight of stairs. I can't do anything that I used to do, and now I have to figure out what can I do.
It's all about like you said, repiecing things back together, rebuilding yourself, rebuilding it's not just like your mentality of it all, right? Because it's already there, right? It's really just building up your endurance, the step-by-step process of, putting a new Justin Sandler back into shape, right? Well, I like how this conversation is going already. We're just diving into it. So just to give the audience a little bit more context.
Yes.
Can you talk about like how this started? Just maybe a good 5 minutes, and then we'll jump into the next thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're asking for how the cancer part started, or
Yes.
how everything before that led into the cancer part?
Yeah, exactly. The latter.
Kind of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and this is something that I will probably repeat more than once today, and I tell a lot of people, is that, it's not if you have big obstacles in life. They're when, right? That doesn't mean everyone's going to get cancer, but it means that everyone's going to face challenges, big and small. One challenge could just be a client who's making life difficult on the phone, where another challenge could be a life-threatening illness. And there's a scope of a million things in between. So the thing is that a lot of people, and I'm fortunate that in this particular case I was not one of them because I started beforehand, but a lot of people will wait until the challenge hits them in the face and they're face to face with this obstacle. They will wait for that moment to start doing the things to help them get through it. And let me explain what I mean by that. For example, for myself, I became vegan in 2011. I've been fitness minded and in health and in good shape for many, many years, always taking good care of my body and taking care of myself. Several years before cancer, I started doing a lot of personal development, getting really deep into all kinds of motivational speakers and gurus and things like that. And then I started also a Buddhist practice, which became my daily spirituality to go along with everything else and my daily chanting. And so having all those things already in place, when my cancer diagnosis hit, I was already so far ahead of the game from other people because I was already kind of teed up. Most people will wait, they get cancer, they're like, shit, I better stop drinking, I better start eating vegan, I better start taking care of myself. But you've already got cancer. So now you got to start doing this now. Whereas my doctors told me when I got my diagnosis, they're like, if anybody's going to make it through this, Justin, you're the guy. Because you're in such good shape, your health, your numbers, your counts, everything is perfect. They told me to stick on my vegan diet, keep doing my exercising, keep doing whatever I'm doing, just keep doing it. And so it made me feel like, you don't wait till something is wrong to start finding your spirituality. Don't wait till you're under the knife to start, cutting fast food out of your diet. If you really want a long life, a long, happy life, it's really important to start doing these things now. Because like I said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And sometimes you think you're in the best shape of your life and you can't be touched like I thought, and then you still get cancer. And then people might be like, well, so you were vegan and you were healthy and you got cancer, so why should I, Well, I'm a unique case. My cancer was a germ cell tumor. A germ cell is something that all human beings have, and when you're just a little tiny embryo developing inside of mom, embryos travel down your soon-to-become a body, because they're not even a body yet when these particular germ cells start. They travel the embryo and they land in what's called your gonad primordia. These are the only cells in your body that can undergo a transformation during their meiotic cell division, which means they actually will select the sex of the person. So the germ cells will go to men or go to women, and then they will, once they establish it and they make their transition, they start to create your reproductive abilities, sperm and eggs and whatnot. There are very few and rare cases where a germ cell just does not get all the way down and gets stuck somewhere along the way. Very rare, but in men it's usually in the chest area, and in women it's usually around the ovaries. What happens is that little cell never gets to where it's supposed to go, so it ends up just lying dormant. It never turns on. And then at some point in life, something awakens that cell, and then it just starts to do what it was supposed to do many, many years ago, but it's not there, so it can't exactly do it. So it just starts creating hot mess. Not a hot mess, but a hot mess. And it grows fast because it's one of the fastest growing cells, because when you're developing embryo, everything is going like lightning speed, right? So something like that, no matter how healthy I was eating and no matter what I was doing, that cell was still rogue. That cell was still out of place. So it was nothing environmental. I didn't get lung cancer from smoking or whatever other causes one might get. But because I was already in such good shape, physically, for example, the chemo is hard, the surgeries are hard, but I powered through them. I was able to come through them where people would look at me, and even today they're like, you don't look like someone who had cancer. I'm like, of course not, because I've been taking good care of myself and kicking ass since way before cancer. And I was able to power through the rounds and not get as nauseous and not get as down or as weak or lose as much weight. You know, I was still lifting weights in the hospital room, and you know, I bring my exercise stretch bands. I was still doing everything to keep myself as strong as I could be, because you know, these medicines destroy you.
Right.
You know, these medicines are meant to save you, but they do an equal amount of damage as they do good. And then the spirituality, I mean, that's the other part, is that most people will fall into this victim role quite easily. And I'm one to admit that I spent a lot of my life victimizing myself over things that happened. This happened to me. This happened to me. And people normally get a cancer diagnosis and they'll say, you know, I got cancer. Cancer is doing this to me. And they take themselves out of the equation of any responsibility and become the victim of their cancer, and they start chanting, you know, I hate cancer and fuck cancer, and I'm going to war with this cancer. And people get so used to hearing those things in society that people will give you those war cries with you. You know, I certainly saw it on my Facebook posts and stuff, like, you know, get him, Justin, kick its ass, go fuck cancer, and all these things. And I'll be honest, none of that resonated with me, and that's because my spirituality set me up to understand what was happening, and I was able to really experience a deeper level of why it was happening, how I was responsible in some ways for it, and how I could turn it around and not make it a negative but a positive. So
let's go a little deeper with that, because I like what you're saying right here. So when you're saying there's a deeper level to it, what do you feel like was a deeper level to it? Can you explain a little bit more on what your sort of perspective of the cancer that you had, because it was in your chest, right?
Yeah.
Heart or?
Yeah, I'll give the 1-2 on that real fast.
Yeah.
The tumor itself, what happened was it was early to mid-April of 2017, and I woke up one morning feeling really ill. And as the day went on, I got worse and worse, right? By the afternoon, I had 102.3 fever, shakes and aches, and my whole body felt like, it just seemed like a really nasty flu. I got in bed, I slept all day. By later that night, I started feeling pressure in my chest, like it was hard to breathe. By the next morning, nothing had changed, but the pressure in my chest felt worse, like someone was kneeling on top of my chest, and I'm trying to breathe through it, and I couldn't. And after 3 days in bed with nothing breaking and no other flu symptoms, we realized that this wasn't a flu. And my general physician, very smart and very in tune with me, she ordered a CT scan, and we took a look, and then they gave me a call and told me that they have found a large mass growing inside of my chest. It was just growing in its own space, but it grew so much that it was at that time, it was already 13 centimeters at its longest point. It actually grew up to 14 by the time I started treatment. And that's how fast it was growing. And because your chest area is a very compact space of organs that all fit nice and perfect, when something starts to grow, it starts to throw its elbows and push things out of the way. Yeah. And so what it had done was it pushed into my heart first, and it kept growing and pushing into my heart wall. It also, we found out later, was fully adhered to my right lung, my superior vena cava, which is the main vein in the body, my left innominate vein, which is the main vein that drains the left arm, a few nerves, and a couple other little bits and pieces. So it grew into everything. It just kind of pushed everything out of the way, but then it adhered to everything. Wow. So we found out that that mass was there. I went through a very intense 2 weeks of testing, which was a really invasive and uncomfortable procedure. There was even a surgical biopsy done through my chest plate to pull a piece of the tumor out and everything. I got the diagnosis, and then within 3 days of the diagnosis, I had to move into the hospital because I needed to do 3 different types of chemo on a 24/7, 1 week at a time. Instead of just going in and out one day, I was there for a whole week, and I had to repeat that 1 week in, 2 weeks at home to rest, and then back for another week, and did that 4 times over the course of the summer, because they had to be extremely aggressive with an extremely aggressive type of tumor. So that was pretty much how, that all came about. The idea was that we had to shrink the tumor and kill all the cells off before any surgery could be done, because this type of tumor is so hot. If you try to operate on it, little pieces could break off and they'll fall somewhere within the body cavity and then start new tumors, and now you've got a whole bigger issue to deal with. So I was very reluctant. Western medicine, chemotherapy was really against my philosophies and against my sort of way of wanting to be. And I really didn't want to go that route. And I really, wanted to stick with my alternative medicines and in my other alternative therapies, which I do believe are very strong and powerful. Many people can overcome cancer through natural ways. But what I had to ultimately accept was that the cancer itself wasn't going to kill me. Long before the cancer itself would get me, my heart was going to go because of the way the tumor was growing into it. And so I would end up dying of some sort of heart failure. And if we didn't do something fast, then that was imminent to happen. Imminent, is that the right word? Imminent?
Imminent.
Imminent, that's right, yeah, okay. My brain.
Okay.
So I finally made peace with it and said, okay, well, this is what has to happen. So what really happened was just going very deep spiritually, and I will give a lot of credit to some of the training that I had done, a really powerful 3-day shamanic and energy healing retreat I had done earlier in that year, and overall just the daily practice of Buddhist chanting, which really let me go as deep as possible. And I just remember just kind of, starting to make realizations. I would just chant a lot. Even right before my first round had started, one of the members of my district called everyone in and said, come to my house, we're going to do a 3-hour Tozo, which is a chanting session specifically for Justin's health and victory. Wow. And my tumor had gotten so big that it was hard for me to breathe at that point, and I was getting ready to go in the next day to start, but I showed up at their house anyway. They didn't know I was coming, and I surprised everybody. Wow. There was at least 15 people were there all chanting for me. And I went and got up right in front and sat in front of the Gohanzen, and I heard all 15 voices in unison chanting behind me, and I felt the power and the strength of the community. And I realized how important, number one, community is. Whatever your community might be, it's really important to surround yourself with community. You don't want to go with things alone. But it also let me drop really deep, and I felt like I was being supported by people, so I could let go of some of my stuff and just really let open ideas flow to me. And that was really the start of me going at a much deeper level to say, okay, I have cancer, but cancer doesn't have me. I'm not going to be the victim this time. And how can I step in and take some of the power back now? What I ultimately realized was that maybe I contributed to my cancer somehow, even though physically I did everything right, taking care of my body and whatnot. What are some of the things, and this, the ideas were coming at rapid fire, because I set the intentions that I was going to stay open to it, that I wanted to, really not come from a different place, and I just sort of allowed ideas to sort of download to me. And one of the big things that came to me was that, I realized that I had stuffed a lot of emotions my entire life. When I was really young, I watched my grandmother suffer and die a really long death from ALS. I watched a lot of the men in my life really shut down emotionally because they didn't want to show the tears, or they didn't want to experience them. I felt myself that crying and feeling that sadness was really painful. And I didn't like the way it felt. I didn't like feeling sad as a young child, 11, 12 years old. So I started to learn how to turn off my emotions. And I turned them off. And I dealt with a lot of shit growing up in school, too. I wasn't the cool kid in school. I was the bullied kid, and I didn't want to show how it affected me. So I, again, remained stoic, always holding my feelings. I stuffed them so much that I literally closed my heart. And I felt like I literally closed it off. And for so many years, I didn't realize this till later, but this really opened my eyes that when you shut off certain parts of your emotional spectrum in your heart, if you cut the sadness, you can't just cut one emotion and expect the other emotions to still live full out. It's almost like it's like a circle that sort of stretches or retracts together, or like the water, the tide will rise and fall. So if your tide is up with all the emotions and you let the sadness tide drop, every other emotion drops, which means my ability to experience extreme joy and happiness and all the what we would call positive emotions also were pulled in, and they all receded together. And so I was more numb. And so years later, I'm like, oh, I shut down my heart, and then I grew a tumor into it. How about that?
I have a quick question for you. Hold that thought. So when you remain stoic, right? In times of like, dealing with certain emotions, right? You just, completely shut your heart off towards all that and just really stood strong in a way, right? Were there times in private that you would let that out?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was off.
Wow.
Yeah. The only emotion that I would ever really show in private was anger.
Wow.
And that would come out, and I would channel it physically into something or another.
Wow.
I guess one good thing was when I was in high school, I had gotten my drum set, when I was like 15, and I could always go and sit behind the kit and just beat the shit out of my drums.
Sure, man.
And crank up some metal music and jump around and bang my head and shake it all out.
Yeah.
So anger seems to be one emotion that can sort of replace the experience of others.
Yeah.
So I guess in my little circle diagram there, it's interesting how anger is one that stands out as one that maybe stands alone. And
anger itself really is a branch, if you want to call it a branch, but like a sprout from fear itself, right?
I actually feel like anger is a sprout from love.
From love.
Yeah.
Okay, explain that.
I go just the other direction. So that's cool. It's kind of a cool segue into where I was going to go, because one of the other things that I channeled to myself through my chanting and my work in the early part of cancer, when I was right getting into it, was the philosophy that I ended up sticking to, living through, and actually my philosophy has become the title of my book and my one-man show. I mean, that's how empowering this philosophy was, and I call it Embrace, Love, Free. And so what happened was, when I took the power back, in a sense, when I said, okay, I grew this tumor into my heart, maybe I had some responsibility with that. Maybe I can take ownership a little bit of that. It's empowering because I'm not the victim anymore. I'm saying, okay, I did this too, so I can step up on this one. Then I said, embrace. It's so important to embrace whatever is going on in your life. If you resist, what the old saying is, what you resist persists.
Right,
if you try to resist and resist and resist, the cancer ain't going anywhere.
Right.
It's just going to keep growing. So if I keep resisting the idea, I'm really living in denial. So what I did instead was I have cancer, I accept cancer, it's here. I'm not going to worry about what I can't control, but I'm going to worry about what I can, and that's how I react. And reaction is everything, what you do next. And I chose, all my power of choices was in my reaction. You have no power in the cancer, but you have all the power in how you react and what you do. And that leads me to part 2 of the philosophy, love. I feel that even more so now than ever, that staying in love, and I'm not talking about being in love, but staying in the space of love really is the way, and I feel the only way, to truly conquer any obstacle. And what I mean by love is that you're in a place of appreciation, in a place of gratitude. You're in a place where, instead of being mad at and cursing out the cancer and staying in this blaming sort of space, you're saying, okay, I have cancer, I've embraced that. What am I going to do now? I'm going to give gratitude for everything in my life that I've had. All the experiences that I've had, I'm so grateful for. All the people around me that are rallying behind me, I'm so grateful for. My family and everything that's around me. Gratitude is so powerful. Healing comes at a vibration of love. If I'm vibrating at the highest possible level, then my cancer can't win, because I'm vibrating at this ultimate power of love, this all-encompassing love. And through that love, I also learned that my cancer could become my mission, and that I could use what I'm going through and share it with other people and help other people, which is why my wife and I started filming every piece of my whole journey and doing live videos and putting them on YouTube, or on my YouTube channel and my Facebook page. And there's 90 videos now. And
wow.
We're filmmakers, and I'm not, I'm used to being in front of the camera, so it became actually easy for me to get on a camera, and it gave me it was almost therapeutic that I could explain to the camera and the audience what I was going through every step of the way and share it.
And an opportunity to express yourself in a way, right? Because expression in itself was, if your only outlet was an expression of anger before, right? In a way, this is an expression of all different types of emotions going on, right? And not only that, it was documented, right? Which, by the way, on the side note, I want to talk about the short film award that you won from Idlewild, right? If we can sort of lead up to that, if that's possible.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's wrap this thought.
Yeah.
And we'll find another magical segue, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
But what I really wanted to get at is in this. Of course, every phone in the world is going to ring while we're in here, right?
That's all right. Man. That's all right.
I will just let it ring. It'll go to a voicemail. That's our studio phone. So the space of love. Okay, and then just to close the thought on that, the next one being free, meaning once you've overcome whatever it is the obstacle may be that you're dealing with, you have to actually free it. And it took me a while to learn that you actually have to let it go. Like when I was done with my cancer journey, it took me a long time before I actually freed the whole cancer from me. In a sense, like I'm not a patient anymore. I can let it go now. I can let myself start to rebuild now. I can step into phase 3, and the phase 3 is free. It's freedom. It's the next step as the overcoming happens. But going back to the experiences of anger, when I was doing those live videos, there were some videos where I was angry, and I let it all out. I never showed anger before outward. This time I did. If I was sad, I let the tears fall. If I was angry, I was angry and I was yelling at the camera. What I realize is that all those emotions all fall under love. They really do, because when you're really angry, a lot of times it's because there's such a strong love for whatever it is and such a passion that the anger becomes the only way to express, especially more so in men than in women. But it still comes out of that. Sometimes your parent or your sibling who you love unconditionally, you'll get so angry at them more than another person. But it's coming from an offshoot of love, because you just want them to be better. You want them to do something to take care of themselves, and they're not doing what they need to do, and you get angry at them. But it's because you love them so strongly that you want them to heal, and so it comes out in that passion. I feel that anger is just as much a part of love. I feel that if there is such a thing as an opposite to love, it's a lack of love, and that is fear. And that is where all love kind of devoids, and that is the space where I feel that people won't survive, is when they're coming in a fear space. Fear and victimhood, those are all kind of, in Buddhist world we call it the kind of devilish functions in that space. We're in this fear space where we're just afraid that everything's happening to us. We have no control, no say, no power. We're vibrating at a very low frequency, and it's the complete absence of love. So I think express the emotions because they're love. But if you live in fear, then you're lacking in that space of love.
Right.
And that's what powered me through every step of the way, even when things got, every round they got harder, physically more challenging. Physically, I lost more weight. I looked more hairless. I looked more weak, and I lost muscle tone. And, by the time I had the surgery after that, I had lost 30 pounds, and I was looking pretty, pretty pale and skinny and pretty knocked up. And I don't know, I still kept going. I still kept chanting. I chant in the hospital. I chant when I was going into surgery. I chanted as I was going under. I would chant with my nurses in the room and just bring them all into my spiritual world. And they were also appreciative of being part of that too.
Yeah.
Because instead of being in fear, they'd come into my room, and my room was a space of love. I took my hospital room and I'd put essential oils in there. I'd have guitars and drums and all kinds of fun things. And my room was like a happy place. They would come in, and I had nurses all the way down to the people who'd come and clean and take out the garbage would stop and sit down and talk to me. And I'd be just throwing wisdom at them and giving advice and just providing a cool little happier space from the normal room they'd go in and out of in the hospital. And so it really became such a different way to go about the journey that really kept me going and allowed me to keep helping other people, which really strengthened my mission, saying I've been given an opportunity to go through this as hard as it is, because there's millions of people in this world that need help, that don't know how to come in love and go through something so extreme. And I have the opportunity now to share this philosophy.
Wow.
And that's where I started writing my book, and I started doing some public speaking, and then I developed the show. And you mentioned the film award. Now that particular award came right before cancer diagnosis. We had created our first short film as a studio. We'd been around since 2011, making projects for people who had hired us. We finally went on a limb and made something of our own. It's a film called Welcome to Where You've Always Been. And I wrote it, directed it, started it, edited it. My wife, Mary Lou, was the cinematographer, co-director, and producer. And we got into 21 festivals. We toured all over with it and won several awards on the film. And we suddenly got a distribution deal on a cable network and had all these next steps in place. And as we were getting all things together, cancer. So the whole film was put on hold. And it was put on hold all the way until the beginning of the following year. And then we decided to come back. We wanted to come back with a vengeance. And we decided to develop a couple of documentary films, which we haven't gotten too far along with because it's just a slower process when you're in recovery to get a lot of things done.
Sure.
But we came up with two different concepts of documentary films that really came out of some of these ideas. And it's kind of became our comeback. Like coming back from this, we're going to get our film out there and we're going to go forward and start making really powerful documentaries. Now our film is about overcoming depression and suicidality. So again, it's a powerful message, but it's not a documentary. It's an actual narrative film. We had done that. We finally got our film distributed on Shorts TV, which is an international cable network of only short films.
Okay.
I think they bought the movie from us. And then we distributed on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
So if anybody out there wants to watch with Amazon Prime, just go to welcometowhereyou'vealwaysbeen.com and that'll take you right to the Prime page.
Awesome.
So the Idlewild Fest was the 21st and final festival that we had done. And the person who runs the festival, her name is Trinity Houston, an amazing woman. She is the producer of the festival, and she saw all the work that we had been doing and what they followed our story, her and the other festival people, and they approached us and said, we would like to give you guys the Inspirational Filmmaker Award.
The WeSpark.
The WeSpark Award,
Mm-hmm.
which was really interesting because I had been using WeSpark because it's an amazing cancer support center right here in Sherman Oaks with all kinds of free services for cancer patients and for their caregivers. And WeSpark has no say in who gets the award. They sponsor the award, and it goes to an inspirational filmmaker, not necessarily a cancer person. It's just the WeSpark Inspirational Filmmaker Award, and it just so happened that they wanted to bestow that WeSpark Inspirational Film Award on us. They asked us to cut together a little kind of mini doc about our journey, which we did, and is about 5 minutes long. And they actually, during the awards ceremony, this is the only film that they played during the awards ceremony, but they played our little 5-minute film for the audience, and it got a standing ovation and tears across the board. They let us speak and stuff and gave us this award, and it was really powerful. And it really showed that even though we are still very much in this recovery phase, it was marking sort of the beginning of the next steps. And then we could go forward, and we've been working on developing the films, and then I got this opportunity to make a one-man show out of my journey, so that that kind of came to the forefront as well. So when I wrote this film, it's a fictitious story based on a lot of my own truth.
Right.
So while I have never been at the edge of suicidal attempt, I've certainly struggled with depression for a long time, and I think that came through childhood and a lot of my life where I just naturally just felt very down a lot, very down on myself. And I think the holding in of expression of feelings also contributes to that because you're bottling things up. And so I wrote this character and the character in the film is, he's basically a spoken word artist who's essentially a very, very successful spoken word artist, and he gets brought into headline events, and he's very known in the community, and he's got a great wife and kind of making a living off of being a poet. And as we set up, one of the big parts of the film is that he's been asked to headline a poetry event, and he doesn't want to be there. And you see how the depression takes hold, because the character has, from the outside looking in, people say he has it all. He's an artist who has made a living doing what he loves to do in poetry. He has a beautiful, supportive wife, and what more could one ask for? Yet he's so depressed and stuck in his own muck that he literally can't see outside of his own shit, and he can't see how blessed he is. And the blessings are surrounding him, but he's wearing almost like those colored glasses that turn everything dark, turn everything off. He doesn't look through and see how blessed he is, because the depression is overweighing it all. And the fact that he doesn't want to be alive, and he doesn't want to be around people. And that really is interesting, because people a lot don't equate depression as illness. And I think very much that depression is a real illness. Like, we all get bummed out once in a while, it's normal. But an ongoing depression is a mental type of illness. And it's such a stigma in our society. And it's like, you don't want to admit that or tell people that, or even because you can't quantitate it like you can. Like cancer, tumor, it's this long, here's your treatment. Whereas mental illness, you can't measure it, you can't control it. But it's still an illness, and it still kills people, because if someone is severely clinically depressed and they end up taking their own life, then the depression was an illness that killed them, the same way a cancer could kill someone. And this character had to go through a struggle and basically be pushed all the way against the wall, and have to learn that either he needs to take his life and let the illness win, or he needs to find the strength to open his mind and his eyes to wanting to live and making his life better. And so making that and seeing how powerful that character's transition could be is the same as with going through a cancer, where it's the same thing. Like, am I going to let it take me to the edge, or am I going to find the strength to keep going and overcoming it?
It was interesting, yeah, because you completed this one, right, before you got the cancer.
Oh yeah, completed the whole festival tour.
So what I was trying to kind of express was that documentary was sort of prepped you for what was to come, in a way. Mm. Can I say that?
Yeah, I think right? That's fair.
Right.
It got me, playing the film at all these festivals, and they'd always have me doing Q&A and stuff and speaking about the overcoming and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, I was already kind of in a rhythm of teaching others and speaking to others about the overcoming, which is, it doesn't matter what you're overcoming from, an obstacle's an obstacle. Yeah.
Right.
And it also, it did lead into it in a sense that I wrote and then acted as and lived as the character who had to face death and overcome it in a sense, to then become the real human who had to face death multiple times.
Right.
I mean, I literally almost died a couple times. One time was really close. and to overcome those. So yeah, in a sense that they do have those parallels, just different types of illnesses. But yeah, it put me on a trajectory where I also saw how powerful your art, and my art specifically, can be. We can change the world through our art and creativity, but it's how are we going to change it? Can we want to make it for the better, or do we want to make it for the worse? And there's a lot of negative things that are put out there and put in people's faces, and I feel like the agenda may be a bit skewed, whether they're trying to put negativity in people's minds or just feeding off of the natural negative impulses of the human brain, and it's just all about the money. And I know if you ever get stuck watching political ads when it gets close to election times,
sure,
the negative ads outweigh the positive ads, and that's because it's what the human brain in the fight or flight mode is drawn to. Like what put on the nightly news, it's like the most horrific stories are first because people are engaged.
Right.
Same way you look at an accident when you drive by, it's like you have to. It's like it's interesting, but that's not what art has to be. Art has power. Right. So if you can create something through your creativity and your blessings as an artist, and create things that help other people. When that film was going around, people were seeing it and reaching out to me saying, your film helped me. It really showed me, a different light, and it's really powerful, and I want to share it with other people. And I'll give you another example. One of our executive producers, happens to be our nephew, my wife's nephew, because he's actually older than me. So kind of weird, different fathers and stuff, whatever. But he is he's in Japan. He's been there for a while, living there for a long time, and he's opened some restaurants and clubs, and he's a very successful gospel R&B singer out there, and a great guy. His name's Costi Payne. And he supported our film, and one of the big draws that he had was that he wanted to bring the film to Japan. And we finally did a full subtitling, all Japanese subtitling. And he was out here a couple months ago, and we talked a little bit about it, and he said, the reason I want to bring this to Japan is because we have one of the highest suicide rates of any country. And he was telling us about the suicide forest. People go into this forest just to kill themselves. He says every day on the news you hear about someone else who jumps in front of a speeding train to take their own lives because of the culture and the pressure that so many suicides are happening. And he wanted to bring a film that showed, the opposite of that. The way that one can say, okay, it might be bad, but the answer isn't taking your life. The answer might be something different, finding the hope somewhere else. And I'm like, that's really powerful. Like, my film could affect someone's life halfway across the world, and I might not know that person and never meet that person, but they might see that film one day and it might just change their way of thinking. Every day on set, Mary Lou and I are a little different than most filmmaking teams. When we get to work and everybody's there, we stop all production and we take 5 minutes to speak to everybody every single day, to thank them for being there on set, to welcome them to our project, to introduce ourselves, as a filmmaking team, and then specifically to talk about why we're making the movie. And every day I would say, we're making this movie, and if we help save even one life, then everything was worth it. It was all worth doing this. And it gets people a different going through their day. Like, oh, I'm here not just because I'm getting paid $100 to, grip a film or something like that. I'm making a project. I'm part of something that could potentially save human beings.
Creates more value.
Complete value.
Right.
And that's what seeing how my art could create that value and could create that ability to help other people was a perfect segue into sharing the cancer journey, and then the projects following the cancer journey. Again, seeing how using my profession, my creativity, and my artwork, which I'm so blessed that this is what I've been bestowed and what I get to do for a living, to take that ability and that gift and turn it around and share it in a way that could potentially help others. Because people need to hear stories, they need to see it. And what's also interesting is that not everybody gets the message the same way. And I realized that I need to be very multimedia in my sense. So that's why I like to go and speak, because some people want to hear a speaker. I made the one-man show because some people like to see things very theatrical, where you mix funny and music and all kinds of things in it. The documentaries will be very informational. And then I also started my book because some people want to get really deep into a longer format and read it. But every human being has a different favorite way that they like to get their inspiration or their information. Right. And I said, this is too powerful of a philosophy and of a message to just pick one. So I'm going to take the time and eventually get all of them out there, and that way it'll have the most maximum impact on the human race and whoever's going through cancers or whatever the case may be, that this may just help them.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. You're talking about stories. I want to talk about your process.
Yep.
Through the stages of your treatments, right? First of all, how many stages were there from beginning to end?
When you say stages, do you mean like the physical
treatments, transformation, your hair falling out?
For sure, and I'll try to be somewhat brief because it could get long if I really went down the road here. Excuse me. So, and what's interesting is that you go through highs and lows in every stage. It's not just one straight shot up or down, and you have to recognize that every step of the way. So when I first got the phone call that there was a mass, I had to go see my doctor. Something was really wrong with me. That initial stage was terrifying, and it was hell. I got a phone call on a Thursday at 5 something. I was with my wife. We were on location doing a big event that we do photography for every year. And it's through our local Chamber of Commerce sponsors it, so it's a lot of people I know in the professional world. And we're pulling up, and I get this phone call from the nurse saying, we need to see you tomorrow because of your scan. And I go, well, what's wrong? Oh, well, I can't tell you over the phone. The doctor needs to see you. Well, what can you tell me? She's like, well, we've also referred you to a cardiothoracic surgeon, a specialist in heart and lungs and esophagus. And so now, all I know is that there's something wrong, and I've been referred up to a specialty surgeon. And you have 24 hours to just live with that. They couldn't see me till 5 o'clock the next day. Wow. So I literally had to spend 24 hours and get through a 3-hour event shoot, in just this place of, what I've learned is that the unknown is the worst parts of all the phases, when you just don't know. That's when fear, or the absence of love, can make its way to the top, because you don't know, and you become so, once you know what's going on, you can sort of quantitate it and make a plan and get deep. But when you have no idea what's going on, every thought in the world comes into your brain, and they're rapid fire. And then once I met with the doctor the next day, and then she just said that, well, there's a large mass, it's in your chest and it's going into your heart, and this is how long it is, but we don't know what it is. You have to go on Monday now. This is a Friday to a Monday. So then I had a whole weekend of waiting. Wow. And again, being in this place, and then I saw the doctor, and he was, from just the initial scans, was very, not convinced, but very much thinking that it was definitely cancer. But he wasn't sure for sure. And he needed to find out if it was and what kind specifically, because that's how they know how to treat it. So then that phase began. And this phase was almost 2 full weeks of a different test every day. And I mean, I had to do PET scans, I had to do blood draws, x-rays. I had to do a full surgical procedure at the hospital where they took me in and punctured my chest plate to pull out a piece of the tumor for biopsy. I had to do an MRI of my brain. I had to do another really interesting test, was where they had to actually do an ultrasound of my scrotum, because germ cell and testicular cancer are in the same sort of family. And I just had to lay there on a cold bed while this guy, rubbed gel and a device over my nuts for 30 minutes to get pictures, to make sure, just weird. You feel like kind of a lab rat. And it's this phase where you're just in this 2 weeks of just, I don't know what's wrong, and I'm a lab rat every day. Someone else is pinning me, pulling me, popping me, and it just, the day I got my diagnosis, I already knew it was cancer. I just knew in my body, and from what I saw in the tests, that it was there. But at least now I had an answer.
Confirmation.
Okay, I got an answer. So then that next phase said, this is what you have, now it's time to treat it. Then there was okay, you need to do all this chemo, then an open chest surgery, and then I met the oncologist, who then told me that your hair is going to fall out, and things are going to change, and there's side effects from the chemo. And oh, by the way, we recommend that tomorrow you head over to the cryobank in Santa Monica and deposit sperm, because if you ever do want to have children, the chemo is going to wreck your reproductive abilities. So all those things together, it's just like all these tests, and then the diagnosis, and then this insane treatment plan. And now the next day I have to go to a cryobank and jerk off into a cup. Sorry, I'm gonna make it a little lighter.
No, it's actually kind of comedic, right? In a way, right?
Yeah. It's like, it's like, okay, really, I'm really in the mood right now.
It's like drama, comedy.
Drama. Yeah. Here, fill this cup, sir. Yeah. So that was really interesting. And then the weekend before, I got to a place of peace. I mentioned earlier that I had the group chanting for me that I got to go and be part of. I also went on that Sunday before to the Gentle Barn, which is an amazing animal sanctuary, rescues all kinds of animals. It's not too far from here. And I went there. There's a whole video about it on my page. And I got to connect with these animals. And the animals of the Gentle Barn are really interesting because they are all rescued, a lot of them from backyard butchers or abusive owners, like horses that were abused by their owners, or animals that were just, it's sad, but it's also the fact that they've been there to overcome their challenges, and they're thriving now in this in this world. And you can go and brush the cows and cuddle the turkeys and do all kinds of really cool things with these animals who have had to overcome major hardships in their lives, and they're animals. They don't know what's happening. They're getting beaten for no reason. So I got to vibe with them, and it really put things into perspective. So when I started the first round of chemo, even though I didn't want to do it, I was still resisting a little bit. I had to accept it, and that's when I started to chant and connect with the chemo. I started, instead of looking at it as poison and all the things I used to say it, I started seeing this. I go, this is my medicine. This is going to help me. And I started, so going through that first week, even though it was rough, I had to have a port installed inside of my chest and run over my collarbone into my heart, and another little surgical procedure. And there was a lot of fallout from that. I kept staying up. I kept choosing the higher path. And 1 week in the hospital, they let me out. The nausea had kicked in a bit. I had a few pretty nasty vomits, but I was still, powering forward. I was using cannabis oil in the hospital the whole time to help deal with the nausea and the pain and everything, and it was really helpful. About 10 days after I got home from my first round, I ran my fingers through the back of my hair, and a big clump came out into my hand. Wow. And then I'm like, what the heck? And I started just pulling it, and just hair was getting everywhere. And over the course of the next 3 days, I was literally shedding like the cats that I have. Wow. Until that next Saturday night, which was the 2 days before I was to start my second round, literally hair was just dropping out of my head onto the ground. Wow. And big bald spots started to form. And it was like, my wife was finally like, okay, we got to shave your head because you're shedding more than all 5 cats put together. Mm-hmm. And so we did it live on video. We did a head shaving live on video, and that was probably my most watched video of all 90. But that was a ritual in itself where, for me, I've always been a hair guy. I've always been like, rock and roll and styled out long hair, and it's kind of been sort of an identity thing. And so I realized, like, it was hard for me at first because I'm like, I don't want, this is my hair. It's like, this is what defines me, my golden locks. Yeah. And then now I'm like losing it all. And that was hard at first, but then I had, again, acceptance. This is a rite of passage. I'm going to go through this. This is almost like, not just because the chemo is making my hair fall out, but it's almost like pruning a tree. Sometimes you have to cut back a little bit. I even explain it to a lot of actors who know Daniel Day-Lewis. Mm-hmm. One of the best character actors of all time. Absolutely. And he goes so deep into his roles that he embodies those characters through and through. But a little interesting fact about Daniel Day-Lewis is that when he completes a film, and that's why he only does a film every 2 years because he goes so deep. When he wraps his film and he's all done with his principal photography, he shaves his head because it's a way for him to prune and to release that character and then, metaphorically start being Daniel again. And so I saw this as a rite of passage, a way to get rid of the Justin prior to cancer and let the Justin of 2.0 start its journey at that point. And so we shaved my head, and pretty soon all the hair fell out everywhere, so I didn't have to shave my head, my face, my legs. I lost all my hair. All of my hair. And every round of chemo, I'd have to go back. It got a little harder each time because I felt a little sicker each time, and I didn't want to be in the hospital for another week. And every time I'd go in the course of a week, I would take 15 huge bags of chemo during that week, plus a bunch of other medicine they had me on. I was taking 30 pills a day while I was there as well, plus drinking all these different drinks and taking all, my legs would get bloated and retain water to the point sometimes where I couldn't even straighten my legs out. It's pretty gnarly. Yeah. In between each round though, we had community, and that helped bring me up. People coming over to visit, bringing me good vegan, food, helping Mary Lou with around the house, litter boxes and things, because I couldn't, I wasn't allowed to even clean the litter box because the risks were there. By the time I got to the 4th round of chemo, it was like, I just didn't want to go back, but I knew I had to finish it. And after I finished that last round of chemo, I was pretty wrecked. And I was having like pain in a sense from the chemo where it was causing shockwaves in my body. There's a video on my page as well where I'm out in my yard and my body's convulsing because every few seconds or few minutes, like a bolt of lightning would just shoot through my body and my whole body would just shake. And it was like it was hell. Like I wanted to die. It felt so bad. And so I had to go several days, living in that state, which really tested me to the last will I had to make it through that. And thinking, okay, well, chemo's done and I'm in hell right now, but wait, I haven't had the surgery yet. Now I have to get ready for surgery. And I went in to meet my doctor and do the basic pre-operation blood labs. They test all your levels before you go into surgery. It's pretty protocol. And I remember we were at UCLA, we did the lab work. We left the hospital and we had an afternoon meeting with someone that we were going to hire to work with us at the studio. And we were having lunch and I was feeling pretty okay that day. And then my phone rings and it's a doctor from the lab who tells me, and they didn't tell me why, but they just said, we need you to head back to the ER immediately. And I was like, well, I'm having lunch. I'm cool. Everything's fine. Can I finish up? He's like, please take your food to go and head to the ER right now. Wow. So we did that. And they came in and said that my platelet count, and platelets are what gives your body, the blood, the ability to stop bleeding. In a sense, that's the easiest way to describe it. If your platelets are normal, you get a little cut, it bleeds for a little bit, and then the platelets help cauterize, close the wound, etc., stop bleeding. If your platelets get too low, then it can't stop the bleeding. Now, a platelet count of under 100 is already too dangerous to do surgery on. If you're under 50, it's dangerous to be out in the street because you could hit the wall and a bruise under your arm could form and keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding internally. And you could die from that. My platelet count was 3.
Wow.
And literally, like, there's a video of me, and he told me it was 3, and I threw my head back. I'm like, oh my God. I threw my head back into the pillow. He's like, don't do that. He's like, don't throw your head back. Don't swing your body. Like, be chill. Because if you bruise yourself right now, it could be catastrophic. So, now I'm like in the hospital and everything had to be delayed. My surgery was immediately canceled and postponed. I had to spend another night on the oncology floor. I had to do 5 different blood transfusions and platelet transfusions. So I was like a vampire, basically taking in all kinds of people's blood. Interesting fact is my blood type is AB positive, which is the universal receiver.
Right.
So that means I can take anybody's blood.
That's amazing.
And I thought that was really kind of interesting and neat that my blood type would allow for A, for B, for A minus, for O, for whatever they had, I could take it. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty powerful to be like the fact that I can receive any blood. And it helped me. It got me over the count of 50. They released me to the world again. And then we kept testing until my blood level, my platelets were over 100. And then my surgeon said, okay, we're going to schedule it this Friday. Now it became a reality, time for surgery. And I'll be honest, the chemo I was able to handle, but being put out for that long of a procedure where they had to literally saw my chest plate open and go inside of my internal organs, it sent me into a bit of a tizzy. I was having panic attacks and kind of little freak outs about it. And it was really uncomfortable. I knew I still had to go through with it, but I had to overcome that. I had to, when I was going through that panic and that, I didn't try to stop it. I released it. I just kept doing my processes. Part of my process, my daily processes every day through cancer, by the way, which I should mention, included, like I'd wake up chanting first and foremost, followed by journaling, writing all my thoughts, getting them onto paper, and my gratitude, always writing at least 3 bullet points of gratitude. Following that, I would read from powerful, inspirational books, no fictional stuff, all really health and healing and wellness and mind and growth and spirituality, but just feeding myself with all that. I felt that really kept me tuned up to take on the day. And I kept doing that even when I was freaking out and having panic and stuff. And then we went in for my surgery and it ended up being an 8-hour procedure. It took longer than they expected. My tumor was stuck to more things than they thought. And it was really intense when I was under the knife. And they came out and they told me, some of the people said that it was the most intense surgery that they had seen in their time at UCLA. I was then left in the ICU for a full 7 days after my surgery. For the first 2 days, I mean, they need to get you out of bed right away. It took a team of 3 people to get me out of bed. That's how I couldn't move. Day 1, couldn't even stand on my feet for more than 30 seconds. Day 2, I had a catheter in, I had 3 chest tubes, I had 2 IVs, I had heart monitors, I had blood costs. I mean, I I looked like some kind of weird futuristic, like operational sort of, I don't know, test of some kind. And they were walking me with a walker, and I had one guy behind me with a seatbelt around me, holding me up, so I wouldn't fall over. And I literally, like, oh my God, earlier this year I was running deep routes as a wide receiver, and now I'm walking a couple inches at a time, barely. And really putting that into perspective, spending a week in the hospital, in this intensive care unit. And then, of course, here, I'll throw a little more humor at you. One thing that the hospitals, they always love to do is ask you how your bowel movements are. That's a big part of your daily activity. And when you're on all that medicine, man, I had an epidural in my back and tons of pain meds being shot through me, and it affects your ability to go to the bathroom. Plus, I wasn't eating a lot because I just felt nauseous from the surgery. So I couldn't go to the bathroom. Several days went by, and my nurse comes in on like day 5 and says, well, I got to go ahead and give you a little, what do you call it? A little rectal, when they push the stuff in there, the
enema?
Enema, yeah. He's like, I got to give you an enema today because we got to get you to go poop. And so that's another thing. Like, you're in there, you've already given up all control. Like, like I said, there's a catheter coming out of the front, and takes a team of 3 people just to adjust me in the bed. And now, my and the nurses are all amazing. They're the best human beings in the world. The nurse I had for the 2 days when I had to go through this particular part was this very kind and gentle gentleman, but he was a few years older than me, a Filipino man, and I'm rolling over while he's, doing the enema, and then he brings this what do you call those little toilets that they said, I forget the name of it. This the little toilet with the seat.
Right. I forget what that's called, but we'll call it toilet with seat.
But yeah, mobile toilet, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But there's no bathrooms in an ICU, right?
Right.
So pan.
Not
the bedpan, no, because I was out of bed for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It'll come to me.
Yeah.
It's a little seat that he gets me out of bed, and I sit down on it, and there's a reservoir tank, and it's a seat, and then it's like a handicap type of a toilet. So, and I have IVs in my hands and my arms, and I was a mess, right? So I'm not allowed to even do a lot of the things that I would normally do to take care of myself.
Yeah. And
so I had to ring the buzzer. He came in, he got me on the toilet, and then he said, okay, hold the buzzer when you're done, ring me, but you're not going to try to wipe or anything. Like, you can't even think about that because there's too much risk involved. So I finally go, and I ring the buzzer, and now he stands me up, and I'm literally standing there. If it could have gotten any worse with as many tubes that were coming out of me, I'm standing there while this 47-year-old Filipino gentleman is wiping my ass. And I'm like, yep, this is the lowest of low now. It can't get any lower than this.
Complete vulnerability, man.
Now you're having some old man wipe your ass. And it's like, yeah, I really had to let go of everything. All shame. I mean, I'm like, here it is. I'm just standing here, and this man is wiping my butt. So that was challenging, man. But I got out of the hospital. And being at home was really tough, but I had some great friends that pitched in, and they rented me a hospital bed to put in our bedroom. That way, because my wife had to get me in. I mean, I couldn't lay down myself. I could, if I was sitting on the couch and I would slip and sort of start leaning over, I didn't have enough strength, especially with my chest being all sewn up, to even sit myself back upright. So the hospital bed was a great help. I had to keep a little bedside urinal because, it was too hard for my wife to wake up in the middle of the night to try to get me out of bed and stuff. Yeah. So I had to just roll over and pee in the little handheld urinal thing, just like I did in the hospital. And my poor wife had to empty it for me. But she did great care of me. She was an amazing caregiver. So now we're in the phase of like recovering from surgery. Yeah. And it took 2 months to really, and I started doing daily walks and keeping myself moving. And after 2 months, I was like, okay, I mean, I'm still feeling a lot of pain and stuff, but I can start getting back to it now. I can get back to at least some training, at least a little bit of light weights, doing some normal things that I would do for myself. And I did that for a couple weeks until I was having some really weird chest pain one day, pressure, that wouldn't go away all day. It kept getting worse. So we went to the ER just to see what was up. Didn't want to take any chances. And they said they saw a little inflammation, but nothing to be concerned about. So they, sent me home, gave me some Advils, and said, just take some anti-inflammatories. You should be okay. But please follow up with your doctor. I went and saw my doctor. She listened to my heart. She goes, I don't really like what I'm hearing. I'm going to refer you to our cardiologist here. So I go and I see the cardiologist, and he listens and says, I don't really like what I'm hearing here. So he schedules me for an echocardiogram. And this is Saturday, December 16th. I go in the morning, I have an echocardiogram, and then friends of ours had an afternoon luncheon party at their place. And so we're there eating food and seeing all these old friends, and I'm feeling pretty good that day. I stepped away to use the bathroom. My phone was in my pocket, but it was turned off, and I opened it up just to take a look, and there was 3 missed calls from an unknown number and all these voicemails. And as I'm going through to check the voicemails, the phone rings again. So I quickly answer it, and it's my cardiologist. I've been trying to get hold of you. Where are you? I'm like, I'm at a party. He's like, leave and go straight to the ER. Oh, I'm like, what? But I'm at a party. I feel fine. He's like, no, you have to leave right now, get your stuff, head straight to the ER back at UCLA. I was like, what's going on? He's like, tell them you have a pericardial effusion, but they already know you're coming. I've already called them. So I go, Mary, we got to go. So we left the party and we headed over to the hospital. I went to the front. I said, I'm Justin. My doctor said I was having a pericardial. It's just, oh, yep, come on in. I didn't even have to sign in or do any of their stuff. They literally brought me straight to the back. The ER, you could wait for 2 hours to be seen by somebody. I didn't even have to fill out paperwork. They took me right in, put me in a room, did another quick EKG. And while I was there, suddenly 2 surgeons came in street clothes. It was a Saturday. And they're like, hi, we're the heart surgeons. We're on call today, so we just got the emergency call to come in. It appears that we're going to need to do a surgery right away on you. They said what's happening. It's called tamponade. I still can't even say this word right. It's not olive tamponade. It's tamponade. I think it's how you pronounce it.
Olive tamponade?
I thought that they were saying. I'm like, are we having a spread? I'm still hungry.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
They're like this. It's called like tamponade. I don't look the word up yourself.
I'll text my cousin. He's a doctor.
Yeah, someone will know. There's actually a joke in my show about because I keep trying to say it the wrong way over and over again. Basically, what it means though is that your heart is collapsing under fluid in its own heart sac.
Holy shit!
And what they came to me and what my cardiologist told me later down the road was that there was a liter of fluid inside of my heart sac, and my heart was literally already collapsing. And basically, I was a few hours away from fatality. They said the top right aorta of your heart has already fallen in, and if we don't do a procedure right away to drain the fluid, within a few hours your heart's going to completely collapse within inside of it because your heart needs to move and pulse, and my heart couldn't pulse against the liquid. So they're like, we got to take you right into surgery. They said, when was the last time you ate? I said, well, I just came from a party, so maybe an hour ago. They're like, we can't sedate you because of the food. You can't be sedated because you could throw up and choke on your vomit and things like that. So they literally had to do the whole procedure with just a little local anesthetic shot in my chest, and I had to stay awake the whole time and watch them puncture a hole in my chest, run a tube in through my heart, and start pumping this bloody fluid out of my heart sac. And I was watching it all happen, and as they were filling up this massive container, and they got more than a half of the liquid out just by using that pump. And then they put a drainage bag on me attached to the hose, and they said you're going to have to stay in ICU for a couple of days, probably 3 days, with this bag attached to you, and it's going to keep draining as the days go on until there's nothing left. And when we see total clear tubes, we can take the bag out and let you go home. So I went up to ICU. There I was. I had my bag. I'm back in the hospital. 2 days later, my original surgeon, the cardiothoracic surgeon who did my main operation, comes in to see me with his team and says, Justin, there's no reason your heart should have filled up like that. We actually have fear that the cancer might have spread into your heart. And so we're going to recommend another surgery where we're going to go in through the side, and then there's all through my left side, making 5 incisions. And we're going to cut a pericardial window, which is about $0.25, or a silver dollar, but that size of a hole on the bottom of the heart sac, which basically will act as a drainage hole. So if my heart should fill up with fluid again, it'll just start to drain, because if I'm too far from a hospital, if I'm like on a road trip or something and it starts to happen, then I won't be able to get anywhere fast enough to clear the fluid again. So he goes, we recommend to do that, number one, to clear any future fluid buildup. But number two, we need to test the tissue and see if there's any cancerous cells. If there is, we need to actually scar your whole chest in to block the cancer from spreading any further, which is a whole big procedure. Again, I didn't want to do another surgery, but I had to submit to this one. And so a few days later, still in the hospital, they took me in, they did a surgery. No cancer was found, which was good. They said that what happened was some blood clots had happened because they replaced my whole right side of my heart wall with a Gore-Tex patch. And so there was some blood clots that happened near and around the patch that caused my heart to react and the fluids to build up. But they said ultimately, though, it was a blessing in disguise that they did the surgery, because my heart had fused to my left lung after the surgery. Because when they do a surgery, they actually collapse your lung and then they refill and reinflate them. They put a tube down your throat so you can breathe. And so when I recovered from the first surgery, my heart and my left lung now were actually stuck together. So they had to dissect the two organs off of each other and separate them, make the hole, test everything, and then send me back up, with more tubes coming out of me. Wow. And that whole stay was 2 weeks, and I got out literally 2 days before New Year's Eve, turning to 2018. Wow. And that was the last of the cancer surgical procedures and treatments. Starting in January became like I said earlier in this on this chat, that you're cancer free, but that's the halfway point. So right. That's where I found myself in that January. Was now, the cancer is gone, but it left just a disaster. It's like a tornado that comes through and ravages a city, and there's nothing but a mess. You got to go in and you got to clean it up, salvage what you can, and rebuild the fucker. Right. So that's where I was now, in that space. So now I'm in the phase of the post-cancer. So every 3 months, blood labs, PET scans, CT scans, visiting all my surgeons, doctors, echocardiograms. So I'm seeing 4 different doctors, still taking pills and stuff. And that went on for almost a year. I got off all the meds finally. We've pushed my scans now to every 6 months. My heart seemed good on the last scan. My blood work looks good now, although I do have a PET scan, CT scan in the beginning of June. I got back to the gym. I started the rebuilding. Yeah. But even throughout that, there are times where I felt really down, days where I'm really depressed. Even recently, like I'm feeling really great. But, there's a lot of side effects from chemo. I didn't discuss even half of them here. But people know, fast-growing cells like ear, nose, and throat. So that's why I had a lot of nosebleeds, mouth sores, ear ringing. Well, the ear ringing came back almost 6 weeks ago. And in my right ear, it's basically a tinnitus now. My ear has not stopped ringing in 6 weeks, 24 hours a day. And I hear it right now as I'm talking to you. Wow. I'm just trying to learn how to overcome it and embrace it. Wow. But that was going on really strong, really loud, really annoying. Then neuropathy, your hands and feet a lot of times get really numb and tingly from the nerves. So I'm trying to get back into playing drums again, and I got my kid over there. I'm jamming on the drums, and 4 or 5 songs in that I'm playing, my hands start getting so tingly and numb that I got to drop the sticks and shake it out and take a break. Then a friend of mine a few months back gave me a big excited hug. Hadn't seen me in a couple of years. Injured my rib cartilage just from hugging me. Wow. My oncologist said that she was concerned about how fragile I was because of that, and we did some tests. And sure enough, my vitamin D levels were extremely dangerously deficient. And then we did a bone density scan, and then also found out that I now have osteoporosis. Wow. And so here I am, a couple weeks ago, my ear's ringing, my hands are tingling, my vitamin D's down, and I'm on meds for that. My bones are now, osteoporosis level. And it's like, and I can't sleep, properly because of everything that's going on. And it really put me to the end. So for a few days, I was like in pretty heavy depression. Again, I had to pull myself out of it. It's okay to have those days. It's natural. You have to experience them. You have to allow. The thing is, don't make it, I think they call it like a samskara, like a stuck energy. Right. Don't make it a stuck energy. Don't let that, stick with you. Like experience it, let it be, sit with it, purify it around your heart and free it. Right. And it can be challenging when you like, I'm done with cancer and here I am like suffering so much still.
Yeah.
And it does sometimes make the days hard. And, you know, I've been going through it, you know, in recent days. And then, you know, like I'm trying to get back to work, trying to, you know, work more, earn more money because I didn't work for at least a year and a half, you know, from cancer. Bills keep coming. Medical bills definitely keep coming,
right.
You know, and then I'm working through that. And then again, in this last month, well, everything else that I just mentioned was going on. You know, I've been on insurance for my wife and I through the Screen Actors Guild for like 5 years now. And in order to maintain that, you have to earn a certain amount of money on Screen Actors Guild jobs every 12 months. And then you stay vested for another 12 months. Well, when I was going through my cancer journey, I wasn't going on set. I wasn't going on auditions and working any acting jobs. So the time at the end of March came where then I lost my insurance. Now I'm still on it through the end of June because you're vested, you know, for 1 full year. But unless something major happens, you know, I made it that 1 year period without vesting for insurance again. So now amongst everything that's going on, now I got to figure out what to do about insurance until, you know, I can start building up my portfolio again and getting out there for more acting work. And so it's, you know, wow. it kind of piles of things on top of you. And then what does someone say? You know, when one thing's bad or two things bad, I can handle it. But when there's that many things all going on at once, what do I do?
Right.
And I say to those people, like I had to say to myself, have your little pity party. It's okay to, you know, have a day or two, but don't stay there.
Right.
Remember what you did to get through it the first time. Embrace love and free. Embrace the fact that my ear is ringing. It's there. I can't do anything about it right now, but I can choose if I'm going to let it bother me or if I'm going to hear it as music in my ears. You know, everything else is going on. It's unfortunate, but if I wallow in the victim of cancer's fallout, then I'm going right back into the place I didn't want to be beforehand. So I got to keep reminding myself, get up in the morning, Justin, do your chanting and all your rituals, get to the gym, keep working out. And I've been doing that. And I will say, like, you know, last year this time, I couldn't have even climbed a flight of stairs without being completely winded. Now I can get on a stair climber at the gym for 45 minutes easy. You know, so it just goes to show I've built my stamina up because I refuse to accept anything less than that. I listen to my body. If it says rest, I rest. But if it's my mind that's saying to stop and not my body, then I know that's just a fear or weakness that I just need to overcome in my mind and keep going, because you have to push the boundaries and go outside of your comfort zone to grow. And recovery and rebuilding yourself is no different. And so I realize I have to push myself. On the days I don't feel like it, I still have to push myself. Of course, again, within the confines of listening to my body ultimately, but still keep doing everything and continue to progress. And then also continue to make it a mission, helping other people. Continue to spread the good word, because ultimately you take it off of yourself and put the focus on how can I continue to help other people with what I'm doing. And, you know, some of this stuff recently has come to light where, you know, my videos are already reaching people that I didn't even realize. And I was contacted by a girl in Toronto. Her younger sister has the same kind of cancer I did. They saw one of my little videos on Instagram where I made up a dumb little song called It's Chemo Time. And I sing and I'm dancing, it's chemo time, it's chemo time. You know, it's just stupid, right? But they found it because she had the same kind of cancer as me, and they watched it and they laughed, and it brought light to their day. And when she wrote me, she said, your song, It's Chemo Time, not only made us smile so much that every time we take her to go do chemo, we sing your song, It's Chemo Time, on our way there. Wow. And I'm like, wow, they're in another country and they were affected by the work I did. So I'm like, it just goes to show that I just need to keep that focus on helping other people while helping myself. And that's why, I put up my show last month. I debuted at a theater in Sherman Oaks, and I've continued to develop it after the first preview run, and the theater asked me to do a 3-show run this summer. And so I graciously accepted the idea to do it, because I know that I can, pack that house and really inspire and touch so many people. So I'm like, yeah, what can I do? Where can I speak? What can I do to keep helping people? Who's going through cancer? Call me, I'll help you. I've been taking phone calls from people I don't even know, who just don't know how to deal with it. And I give them some of my philosophy and listen to them, and they're like, wow, like you just changed my perspective. I I can see things a little differently now. You're right, I don't have to just sit here and be the victim of this.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right, so just keep going, man. Just keep sharing that.
One moment at a time, man, right?
So, I mean, it's hard to accept it, but it's one moment at a time, and you also have to be very forgiving of yourself and not be mad at yourself for not being able to run as fast as you could before things got started or whatever. It's like you got to be gentle. And then the other part that's hard to accept, but you have to, is that I am where I am, and I'm going to do the best with what I have today.
Exactly.
And if this is the best I have, and as long as I work to do the best, if I come short of the best, then I'm not doing it. But if I go right up to the best that I can be of myself today, then I'm still fulfilling my mission, and I'm still doing what's right for me.
Right.
Because I'm making the most of today, and I'm not worrying about what I can't do, but what I can do.
Right. And
that's really the ultimate. And it's interesting that we're having this chat today, because I got a Facebook memory this morning of a video that we had shot on the journey. We were in the car doing a live video on the way to the hospital to begin round 1 of chemo.
Wow.
Today.
Wow.
So today is the 2-year anniversary of the first day of my chemo treatments.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Here we are talking about it now.
Wow. In rhythm, man.
Right?
Good rhythm.
Yep.
Excuse me. Wow, that is so, wow. Wow. I'm just processing all that right now. And,
yeah, take your time on that one.
No. No, this is great. This is great. I had something I wanted to mention, but I sort of coughed it away. Where did it go? I feel like you've said so much empowering empowering things and messages that you were to give, but to leave this podcast,
yes,
was with one thing that you'd love to share and hopefully inspire and keep that one thing that somebody might be going through this process, right? Mm-hmm. So that they can hold on to. Mm-hmm. What would that be?
I have to go back to the philosophy. I think that just speaks such loud and large volumes. Embrace love free. Because if you apply that to anything you're going through, I think there's no way you can't win. Whatever the problem is, embrace it. I have this, it's there, I can't control it. What can I control from this point forward? I'm not going to be the victim of this. I'm going to embrace that this is happening. Even if it's a work-related thing or, it doesn't have to be a physical thing. Embrace it, I have it, it's there, now what? Get the hell away from the victim space and why this happened or why I'm having this struggle. How do I embrace it? Number 2, stay in love. Always come from a place of love. Vibrate in love. When I was going through my cancer, when my tumor was still there, not only did I stay at that vibration of love, but I developed a relationship with my tumor. I talked to my tumor. I spoke to it. I'd be chanting outside of the stars and holding my chest and talking to my tumor and saying, yo, I love you. I love you. I mean, it's a weird concept to say that I love you, cancer. But if I say I hate you, it's something that's part of me, inside of me, made from my cells. How am I going to hate that? How am I going to put that kind of negative energy to something that's just part of me? That cell, rogue and maybe out of place, was just trying to do its job, and it was just trying to survive. Just like everything, we're just trying to survive. And that's all it was trying to do. I'm supposed to do something, I'm going to do it. So the cancer cells aren't good and they aren't bad, they just are. So it's your choice whether you're going to hate them or love them. Because they're not purposely trying to hurt you, they're just trying to do what they were supposed to do. They're just stuck in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's like, it's a whole thing. So by speaking to my tumor, saying I love you, it makes everything feel so much lighter. It let me feel like the tumor wasn't the enemy, but more like my partner. I said things I would say to my tumors: you are my teacher, you are my mentor. I'm learning every day so much because of you. So while you're not doing the job you were supposed to be doing, the job you're doing is so much greater than any job you could have done originally. You're teaching me more in this short amount of time than anything has ever taught me in my entire life. So thank you. But then I'd also follow that by saying, you've completed your job and it's okay to let go now because your job is done. So you can let go and know that you've done your job still. You don't have to keep fighting to stay there. And I would do visualizations, and I would literally see the little cells dying comfortably, just letting go, like releasing, and little smiley faces. And then when they would die, the little eyes would just turn to X's as they would kind of close their eyes for good. And they would peacefully kind of drift like a piece of paper floating in the wind into my body to be reabsorbed and go away one by one by one. And that process, excuse me, was so much more empowering than picturing a war going inside of my body. You know, people are like, yeah, and visualize the chemo as like, you know, guns, shooting and destroying it. I'm like, fuck no, dude. Like, war is bullshit. No one has ever won a war, ever.
Yeah.
And whoever claims to have won the war, you didn't. People die, things die, life dies. War is death. War is not a way to achieve anything. So declaring a war inside of my own body was definitely off the table. And I encourage anyone to not declare war against their obstacle, but to say, hey, I love you. Try it. See what happens. See how that might lighten you a little bit and give you a different perspective. If I love you, then we're going to find a different way to overcome this. But gratitude. And then, you know, the freeing part, let it go. Once you've overcome it, like for me, I was still holding on to my cancer for the first 6 months of last year because I was still suffering so much. And then one day I was like, well, I'm not even listening to my own advice. I got to do the free part. I got to stop being the patient and stop being, you know, the guy who had cancer and just be the guy who was rebuilding. And you need to free it to the ether. You need to let it all go. Embrace it, love it, free it. And I think that those 3 steps can be applied to anything, you know. And then someone might say, well, what if someone dies from their cancer or whatever? It doesn't mean you still can't embrace love and free. I mean, we're all going to die at some point. That's the inevitable. Whether you die sooner than later from cancer doesn't mean you still can't spend every single day growing to the last day you die, still working your brain, learning and growing and absorbing and helping and teaching other people and making it your mission, instead of being wallowing in misery and just waiting to die. It's a big difference. You can still embrace, I have cancer, I might die. I'm going to love it no matter what. And then my free process might not be free and rebuilding. My free process might just be passing onto the other side, and my soul will just leave my skin suit, if you will, and move elsewhere, but I'm still freeing it. So I'm still embracing it, loving it, and freeing it. I'm still helping other people, and I'm still going to keep absorbing and learning and growing every single day for every day I have, making the most of every minute that you still have, and not waste a single second wallowing in any misery because it's not productive and it's not advantageous to any sort of life. Right. Even if you have a week left, you live that week. You don't wait to die. Right. And that's the big difference. So that's the message. And if I may say, if people out there want to get in touch with me, ask me any questions, or if those who are going through cancer specifically or know someone they're welcome to send me a message. I'll be more than happy to get on the phone with a person going through cancer. My name is Justin Sandler, and maybe, I don't know if you post it somewhere, tag it, but all my social media at Justin Sandler, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.com/Justin Sandler. You can search my name on YouTube and watch some of my videos. But I put it out there for those to see and to help. So use it, watch it, absorb it, ask me questions. If you have another perspective, throw it at me. I'm open to hearing things. The website for my show is embracelovefree.com, and all the information and tickets and everything will be there.
Awesome.
And those are all the ways to find me.
Justin, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much,
An
man.
honor and a pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, thank you.
Boom.
Thank you. Wow, this was amazing.
And thank you out there, whoever was listening. I appreciate you and your time.
Yeah.
Good luck to everybody.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode. See ya.